The average American spends $58,000 on a car they'll drive for 6 years. That's not the sticker price. That's the real cost. Insurance, gas, maintenance, registration, interest on the loan they probably took out to buy it. $58,000. For context, that's more than the median annual salary in 32 states. It's roughly the cost of a 4-year degree at a public university. It's enough to buy a small house in parts of the Midwest or put a serious down payment on one almost anywhere else. And here's the thing that makes this number so quietly devastating. Most people do this 3, 4, maybe 5 times over their working life. They're spending $250,000 on vehicles that lose value the moment they leave the lot. We've been told for decades that a car represents freedom, independence, the open road, the American dream on 4 wheels. But somewhere between the commercials and the monthly payments, that dream became one of the most efficient wealth extraction machines ever designed. This is the story of how your car became a financial trap you pay to stay in. If you want to understand how ordinary financial decisions quietly shape your entire economic future, hit subscribe. We break down the systems that run your money so you can stop running on autopilot. New videos every week. Let's start with a simple question. When did owning a car stop being a luxury and start being a non-negotiable requirement for adult life in America? The answer is somewhere around 1956. That's when President Eisenhower signed the Federal Aid Highway Act, authorizing the construction of 41,000 miles of interstate highway. It was sold as a national defense project, a way to move troops and evacuate cities in case of nuclear war. But what it actually did was reshape the entire geography of American life. Cities sprawled, suburbs bloomed, downtowns hollowed out, and suddenly the distance between where you lived and where you worked became too far to walk, too spread out for efficient public transit, too car-dependent to function without one. By the 1970s, the average American household went from owning 0.8 cars to 1.5 cars. Today it's closer to 2. Not because people love cars twice as much. Because the infrastructure demands it. You can't get to work without one. You can't get groceries without one. In most of America, you can't live without one. This wasn't an accident. General Motors, Firestone, and Standard Oil were convicted in 1949 of conspiring to dismantle streetcar systems in 45 cities across the country. They bought up the transit lines, ripped out the tracks, and replaced them with buses they built and fueled. Then those bus systems were underfunded, underserved, and eventually abandoned in favor of highways. The car became necessary because we systematically eliminated the alternatives. And once that necessity was locked in, the real extraction could begin. Here's how the trap works. You need a car, so you go to a dealership. The average new car in America now costs $48,000. That number has increased 65% in the last 10 years, far outpacing wage growth, inflation, or any reasonable measure of improved value. But you need a car, so you finance it. The average auto loan is now 70 months long, just under 6 years. A decade ago, it was 63 months. Lenders have stretched the timeline because it's the only way to make the monthly payment seem affordable. You're paying $660 a month, which feels manageable, but you're doing it for 70 months, and you're paying 6% interest, which means you're adding nearly $8,000 in interest alone on top of that $48,000 price tag. But wait, you also need insurance. Full coverage because the bank requires it. That's another $2,000 a year. Gas costs about $2,000 more. Maintenance and repairs, even on a new car, average around $1,200 annually. Registration and fees, another $500. So in year 1, you're paying $6,600 in loan payments, plus $5,700 in operating costs. $11,300 total for 1 year of owning one car. Now let's say you keep that car for 6 years, which is roughly the average. You'll pay out nearly $40,000 in loan payments, $34,000 in operating costs, $74,000. But remember, you didn't pay cash. You financed. So you actually spent $56,000 on the car when you include interest. Add the $34,000 in operating costs, and you're at $90,000 over 6 years for a car that's now worth maybe $18,000 if you're lucky. You just lost $72,000. And most people never calculate this number. They just think about the monthly payment. Okay, but smart people buy used, right? They avoid the depreciation hit, get a reliable car for $15,000 or $20,000, and come out ahead. Except that's not what's happening anymore. Used car prices have exploded. The average used vehicle now costs $28,000. That's up 40% since 2020. Part of that is pandemic supply chain weirdness. Part of it is because new cars got so expensive that demand shifted to used, which drove up prices there too. And part of it is because dealers realized they can charge more and people will pay it because, again, you need a car. But here's the darker part. Used cars break. A 3-year-old car might seem safe, but you're inheriting someone else's wear and tear. Maintenance costs spike. You're spending $1,500, $2,000, sometimes $3,000 a year keeping it running. You don't have a warranty. And if something major goes wrong, a transmission, an engine, you're looking at $4,000 to $6,000 in repairs on a car you paid $28,000 for. So people finance used cars too. 70% of used car buyers take out loans now. The average loan term? 68 months. For a used car, you're paying interest on a depreciating asset that's already halfway through its useful life. And when that car dies or becomes too expensive to maintain, you're back at square one. You need another car, so you finance another one. The cycle repeats. You're never building equity. You're never getting ahead. You're just paying to stay in the same place. Let's talk about insurance, because this is where the trap gets genuinely cynical. Car insurance is legally required in 49 states. You cannot drive without it. And the insurance industry knows this. So they've spent the last 20 years perfecting the art of charging you more while covering you less. The average American now pays $1,700 a year for car insurance. But that number hides enormous variation. Young drivers pay $3,000 to $4,000. People with one accident or ticket on their record pay double. People in cities pay more than people in suburbs. People with bad credit pay more even if they've never had an accident, because insurers have decided credit scores predict risk. None of this is about your actual driving. It's about segmenting customers and extracting maximum revenue from each segment. And it works because you have no choice. You need insurance. The law says so. The bank says so. So you pay. But here's the kicker. Insurance companies have gotten very good at avoiding payouts. They'll fight claims, delay reimbursements, and deploy teams of adjusters whose job is to minimize what they owe you. The average claim payout has decreased relative to premiums over the last 15 years, even as premiums themselves have skyrocketed. You're paying more and getting less, and you can't opt out. That's not a market. That's a hostage situation with paperwork. So let's zoom out. Why does this matter beyond the individual financial pain? Because car dependency is one of the most regressive economic structures in modern America. It disproportionately harms the people who can least afford it. If you're wealthy, car costs are annoying but manageable. If you're middle class, they're a significant drag on your ability to save and invest. If you're poor, they're catastrophic. Roughly 40% of Americans couldn't cover a $400 emergency expense without borrowing or selling something. But car ownership regularly generates expenses far beyond that. A transmission replacement, a blown tire, an unexpected insurance hike. These aren't rare events. They're inevitable. And for millions of people, they're the difference between stability and crisis. Meanwhile, car dependence locks people into specific geographies. You can't take a better job if it's too far to drive. You can't move to a neighborhood with better schools or lower crime if you can't afford the longer commute. You can't escape a bad situation if you don't have a reliable vehicle. And all of this is by design. We built a country where you need a car to survive. Then we made cars expensive enough that owning one keeps you from getting ahead. It's not a conspiracy. It's just what happens when infrastructure, industry incentives, and policy all align in the same direction. The result is a massive upward transfer of wealth. Automakers, lenders, insurers, oil companies. They extract billions from people who have no alternative. And because the cost is spread out over time and divided into monthly payments, it never feels like you're being robbed. It just feels like life. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Your car is probably the worst investment you'll ever make. And you'll make it over and over and over again because the system we live in doesn't give you another option. You could try to fight it. Move to a city with good public transit. Bike, walk. But most people can't. Their job is 20 miles away. Their kid's school is 10 miles in the other direction. The grocery store isn't on a bus line. The infrastructure isn't there. And even if it were, American cities aren't built for anything other than cars. So you pay. You take out the loan. You sign up for the insurance. You fill the tank. You watch the value evaporate. And you tell yourself it's freedom because that's the story we've been sold since we were old enough to see a commercial. But freedom doesn't come with 70 monthly payments. Freedom doesn't depreciate the moment you drive it home. Freedom doesn't trap you in a cycle where you're always one breakdown away from financial disaster. The car isn't freedom. It's the bill you pay to participate in a system that was designed to make sure you never stop paying. And the really unsettling part? Most people never do the math. They just keep driving.